What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. A lot happened in the Premier League this weekend, so I want to kind of run quickly through some of my bigger takeaways from some of the games and then get to one more thing at the end, starting with your marquee matchup. Manchester City defeat Chelsea. It does not begin well for Manchester City. You bring in your new defender, and Kuznov has a horrendous first 5-10 minutes of the game, gifts Chelsea a goal, nearly gifts a second one. But after that, once Kuznov kind of sort of got up to speed with the game and got settled in a little bit, built some confidence, it was all Manchester City. Eventually, they get the goals. It's a comfortable win in the end, a deserved win. And I want to focus more on the Chelsea side of this because this is City looking more like City. They are still flawed. You saw some bad moments still from the midfield. You saw what happened midweek against PSG. I don't see them somehow making some miraculous title challenge and pushing Liverpool or anything like that. They are one of the four best teams in this league, though. And that is in large part because there are two, and maybe Nottingham Forest, and then not really anybody else. I mean, maybe Newcastle. But City are just simply still one of the four best teams in the league. And they have recovered somewhat from their horrible slump when they couldn't beat anybody. I talked about this a couple weeks ago, that this stretch was going to be defining for Chelsea because they had this set of winnable games, and then you've got games like this one, and your end to the season is really, really difficult. So they then proceeded to drop a bunch of points that they should have had. And now you go into games like this, and they lose these ones. And now all of a sudden, they are struggling to even be in the. I mean, of course, they still are in the Champions League top four conversation. But this looks completely different than it did a month ago. And right as their slump was beginning, I made the point that Enzo Maresca did this last season at Leicester too. And to me, this is a more accurate reflection of where Chelsea are really at. And it reinforces my firm belief that I have held consistent on that this is about Cole Palmer more than anything else. This is not that Chelsea have figured all of this out and they are miles ahead of schedule and they're going to be, in position to go title for a challenge next season or something like that. They've played 23 Premier League games. If you break it down from the first 15, where they looked great and were one of the four best teams in the league, and the last 8, where they've fallen apart, 2 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses, if I've got that correct. Look at Cole Palmer's numbers. Cole Palmer has 3 goals in that stretch. 0 assists. And they're averaging, I think it's something like a full goal less per game. Of course, correlation doesn't equal causation. And there are multiple things going into this, and they were always going to regress because they're not one of the 4 best teams in the league. But they go as Cole Palmer goes. And if he is not carrying this attack, they are not an elite offensive unit. Nicholas Jackson's life is made much easier by the fact that Cole Palmer can pick out any pass on the field and set him up really well. Noni Madueke, same thing. Can go down the list. They don't have somebody to do the things Cole Palmer does. It is why he is the most valuable attacking player in the Premier League. To me, Rodri still has a very strong argument to be the most valuable player in the league, based on what we've seen from City this season. But in terms of attackers, you can kind of sort of make a case for Mo Salah just because he's so good. But the way those other guys are playing at Liverpool, to me, this is not a discussion. I mean, maybe Alexander Isak, but nobody is more important in terms of determining where their team goes from an offensive standpoint than Cole Palmer. It's a testament to how brilliant he is and what happens when he is not brilliant and doesn't produce a goal or assist every single game like he did over the first almost half of the season. That's really all I wanted to say about that game. The better team won as expected, and Chelsea have work to do if they are going to qualify for European competition. You look at all of these teams around them, you look at the way the season is going to end, they missed a really good opportunity, and now they got to find a way to make up for it. Staying with the top of the table, I have nothing to say about Liverpool beating Ipswich. Arsenal, Wolves are the game I want to focus on next. I made this argument last week that the goal scoring is not as big of an issue as people make it out to seem, and in a game where they go down a man, they still find a way to score a goal. Without all those players that they're missing, with kind of a makeshift attack, with a questionable, unlucky red card, Calafiori comes off the bench, scores a nice goal. They hold on for the win. João Gomez could have collected 2 yellow cards and then a straight red. He ultimately gets 2 yellows, which lead to the red, which really changed the game. You could see how frustrated Vitor Pereira was. Every point matters when you're in a relegation battle, obviously. And he more or less threw 1, maybe 3 away. Because Arsenal were creating chances 10v11. But there were also some good moments from Wolves in there, and it just completely changed because of that red card. And I'm not going to get too deep into this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But if you are an Arsenal fan and you are sitting there watching yet again somebody kick the ball away and not get a second yellow for it when your players are, the inconsistency with that is frustrating to me. But neither here nor there. They find a way. Gomez gifts them another yellow card. Certainly a second yellow. He gets sent off. That changes the game. Arsenal get the win. Then, going back to the top-ish of the table here, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest. Bournemouth win this game 5-0. Forest do not give up goals. Bournemouth ran right through them. All of the attacking players, the ones that started the game, the ones that came off the bench, were fantastic. It was a sight to behold. Antonio Raiola is doing a phenomenal job. If they keep this up, he might have my vote for manager of the season. Arne Slot is obviously making a very strong case as well. This is after, by the way, beating Newcastle 4-1. And the best goal they scored in this game didn't even count because of a clear but not egregiously bad offside. It was pretty close. I mean, it was offside. But Justin Kluivert, that was a phenomenal goal that didn't even count. They could have easily had 6 or 7. It was one of the best performances in the Premier League this season. This team is just really, really good. Fun to watch. And you just don't see teams do this to Nottingham Forest. You might find a way to beat them 1-0 or 2-1. But the number of times after these goals, their center backs who have been so good this season were just looking around wondering what in the world was happening. It was an extraordinary performance. So I wanted to give Bournemouth their props for that as well. Then, can't finish off this kind of Premier League recap of the weekend without talking about what happened at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Spurs go up a goal against Leicester. They go into halftime. They come out of halftime, concede twice in 4 minutes or something. Can't find a way back into the game. Leicester's losing streak is snapped. Spurs lose again. By the way, Leicester are now out of the relegation zone. It hasn't looked pretty at times. I made this point with Steve Cooper too. Just from a pure point standpoint, it has never been as bad as people have made it out to seem. And yes, they were on a terrible run since Van Nistelrooy took over. They got a manager bounce for 1 game, beat West Ham, and then it's been bad. But they played well against Liverpool in that stretch. They played really well against Manchester City in the stretch. It's not like every performance has been terrible. They're clearly not a good team. They are the 17th or 18th best team in this league. The question is whether they are the 17th or 18th. That's what we're still trying to figure out. And yes, you go look at that Spurs lineup out there. I mean, of course they're decimated. And there are basically no options to upgrade the attack on that bench because of all the injuries. And that is part of the story here. But I also refuse to blame this all on player availability. You look at that second goal that they gave up. I mean, El Canus is just by himself chilling at the edge of the 18-yard box. And Leicester don't have that many players that you feel like are really dangerous in that spot. That's part of their struggles is they can't score goals and they don't take advantage of opportunities because other teams probably would have scored 2 or 3 in the first half against Spurs with some of their turnovers in really bad areas because of the way they play. But El Canus is one of the few players out there that you can't give him that amount of time. Nobody closes him down, and he just picks out his spot in the corner, and the game completely turns in 5 minutes. It's a huge win for Leicester. It's a huge confidence boost. This was kind of the bad vibes derby, and somehow it just completely flips in the second half. All of the chants mainly directed at Daniel Levy. That's part of the story here. It's just one of the most bizarre seasons you will ever see because of their goal difference and where they are on the table. And I still do not believe they're going to get dragged into a relegation race. To me, there's 4 teams, and 3 of them are going down unless points deductions in Manchester City. But let's just, for the sake of the argument, assume 3 teams are going down from the bottom of the table. There are 4 teams. I think Everton are safe at this point. Of course, they still have work to do, but they have really improved over the last month or so. Continue to put points on the board, even if they don't win, they get draws. They're not good, but to me, they are clearly better than these other 4 teams. And I feel the same way about Spurs. But it's the same thing I've been saying, that at some point, if you're Ange Postecoglou, you've got to take some responsibility here. This is not just about personnel. This is about philosophy. This is about an incredible inability to hold on to leads and a stubborn refusal to do anything about it and to actually value the results more than the way that you play. You don't have to change your principles, but sometimes you have to adapt to the situation and manage the situation. He just will not do that, and he points to anything but that as the reason for their struggles. This is going to be the story. You just got to decide whether you're okay with it if you're Spurs. Maybe they get a trophy or 2 out of the season, and that's good enough because that's the one thing they don't have. And it just doesn't matter where they finish. But this is who they are, in the words of Ange Postecoglou. And you got to decide if you're Daniel Levy, if you're everybody into positions of leadership there, if this is good enough. Because the pressure, the frustration is only going to continue to mount. You saw it in that stadium with the way that game played out. Finally, before I get going here, also wanted to talk for a minute about the very big news that finally became official on Sunday that had been rumored for days. Naomi Girma officially announced as a Chelsea player, record-breaking transfer fee for a center back, which is an extraordinary thing to think about. And it is also 100% justified. And the interesting part about this for me is kind of 2 different things. Number 1, this is about as safe a transfer as you can possibly think of. If you are Chelsea, you know exactly the type of player you're getting. You know exactly who Naomi Girma is. You know exactly what she does. You know exactly what she's bringing to your team. She is perhaps the most single reliable player in the entire world, men or women. When does she have a bad game? She just shows up and plays exceptionally well every single game. So in that case, this is the safest record-breaking transfer fee you could possibly have. The other part of this that I am really happy to see that has started to change over the past couple of years with Rodri, with Declan Rice's signing by Arsenal to a certain extent, with deals like this one for Naomi Girma, with Rodri winning the Ballon d'Or, is that people are finally starting to embrace this idea that you don't have to be an attacking-minded player to bring incredible value. These number sixes, center backs, number eights, potentially outside backs, can be exceptionally valuable too. Especially when in this kind of situation, Naomi Girma is just light years ahead of every other player in the world in her position. She's 24 years old. When all these teams are trying to play out of the back, distribution, facilitation, tempo setting, calmness on the ball, all of those things are fundamental and crucial to your team. It's why Rodri is the most important, most valuable player to Manchester City. And I still refuse to believe it's an accident that they are struggling without him, because they have struggled throughout his time there when he's not on the field. When they had little blips on the radar, uncharacteristic results, a lot of times it was because he wasn't there. And so to now see him win a Ballon d'Or, to see Chelsea go, yep, we're not breaking the record transfer fee on some attacking player, some winger, some goal scorer. No, we're going to go get the best center back in the world, and we're going to treat her like the best player in the world, because that's the level she's on. Now, we can have an argument about who the best player in the world actually is and whether it's her. But if one of those players, a Tanya Beaumonti, a Sam Kerr, a Naomi Girma, a Sophia Smith, whoever you want to throw in that conversation, if one of those players is going to move, it should be for a world record transfer fee, especially one that is 24 years old and not even in her prime yet. Doesn't matter the position. She is that valuable. She makes your team that much better. Because there is no other player you can find. It's the same idea with Rodri. There is no player you can replace her with. She is just better than everybody else at her position. And so this is getting really interesting for Chelsea, as they are really trying to load up here, trying to break through in Europe, trying to maintain their dominance in the domestically in England. We'll see if kind of how this all plays out. She's obviously got some U.S. international teammates there too, which is nice. But I just wanted to. I've firmly been a believer in this, going back to N'Golo Kante. These players matter an incredible amount. You see what Declan Rice has meant to Arsenal. Of course, you got to go score goals at the end of the day. But part of that is having the infrastructure and the ability to possess the ball, the ability to distribute the ball, to coordinate, facilitate attacks, to set tempo, to put everybody else in positions to succeed. That's what Rodri does. That's what Naomi Girma does. That's why this is a no-brainer for Chelsea. She's going to be worth every cent that they paid for her. She will probably actually exceed what they paid for her. That's how good she is. That's how confident I am. And like I said before, you know exactly what you're getting. And that is one of the best players in the world, the best player at her position, and somebody who is only going to continue to improve and it is as reliable as any player on this planet. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.